vegan foods and restaurants kosher by default, right? It's not like there's meat in there. It's not like there's milk in there. It's just fruits and vegetables, nuts, raw, in the raw, or even cooked. But why aren't vegan restaurants and foods kosher automatically? Why do they need a kosher supervision and stuff like that? So, just in general, before we dive into vegan food in particular, just to talk about kosher for a brief moment. So kosher, the word kosher means fit. And basically what it means is it's fit to eat according to Jewish law. And the way we know it's according to Jewish law is by verifying. Hi, Michael. Thanks for joining us and being a part of this. And hi to all of you. Thank you for joining it. I like the love. Hi, Mike. Thanks for joining us. Hi, Rochelle. Thank you for joining us. So kosher in general means fit. And when you say something is kosher, it means it's fit to eat according to Jewish law, according to the Torah. And what it means is, oftentimes people confuse it and think, oh, kosher means a rabbi came and blessed it. And that has nothing to do with the kosher process. The kosher process may have a rabbinical supervision, a rabbi's name, or a rabbinical court that oversees the kosher process, but they're not just coming there to give a blessing and to just let you know that the rabbi came in and gave a blessing, but actually the rabbi comes in, or a representative of the rabbi, and checks the cooking or making process, the process of how that specific food is made, to make sure there's nothing unkosher about it. And if you can verify that it's not unkosher, then it becomes kosher, and they'll put a stamp or a supervision or a symbol, like you may have seen, circle K or circle U or Chaf K or many other kosher symbols. Those are kosher agencies that vouch and say said item is fit to eat according to kosher standards. And so too, when we dine out in restaurants, we do the same thing. We eat at restaurants that there is a backing authority that says this place was verified. We have a mashgiach. A mashgiach means a superintendent, or someone that is there from the kosher agency's eyes and ears, so to speak, to make sure that the process stays kosher and the food is in fact fit to eat according to Jewish law. So that, with that preface, hi Ben and Rue, thanks for joining your dad and joining the class as well. Thanks for being a part of it. So that, with that preface of kosher not being a blessing that a rabbi gives, but actually oversight to make sure that there's no non-kosher ingredients, we will turn to our question of today, is if you have vegan foods, which vegan foods don't contain any animal product, and fresh fruits and vegetables and things that grow from the ground are by definition automatically kosher, why would a vegan product need a kosher supervision? Wouldn't it just be kosher automatically by default? So they say a story of a rabbi that was walking down the street. He was heading home from synagogue. And as he walks down the street, he walks by a barbecue place, which was very not kosher. And he peeks inside. As he's walking, he sees in the glass window, he sees the president of the synagogue is sitting down with a very unkosher looking dish in front of him. So he can't contain himself, the rabbi. He's like, I can't believe it. Here, the president of a synagogue is sitting and eating a non-kosher, and he barges into the restaurant. He says, Mr. President, what's going on? So he says, what do you mean, Rabbi? He says, how could you sit there in the restaurant and eat something that's not kosher? So The president of the synagogue turns to the rabbi and says, "Did you see them deliver the food to the table?" He says, "Yes." And he says, "Did you see me eat it?" He says, "Yes." So he says, "So what's the problem, Rabbi? It's under rabbinic supervision. You're watching it all, isn't that?" But the point is, so today we're going to dive into the kosher thing, and we're going to look at kosher and why vegan products and restaurants need kosher supervision from two perspectives. Hi, Ryan. Thank you for joining us and being a part of the conversation. Hope you're having a great Sunday. So, what happens is like this. We're gonna look at two different perspectives as to why vegan foods need kosher supervision, both in products and also in restaurants. Two different reasons. So the first reason is that most vegan products are made and production is in plants that also make things that aren't vegan. So they're not using exclusive machinery or equipment or kitchens. Many vegan products that are made, they rent kitchen space from companies that don't make strictly vegan foods. And therefore there's an issue with contamination. Okay? So, for example, a vegan product may be produced in the same factory or same product line as something similar that's made of not kosher, and therefore there may be traces of animal product or other things that aren't kosher in the foods that are vegan. And according to an official website for vegan certification, you can see this yourself if you go on the web and you go to vegan.org and you write vegan.org/vegan certifications. They'll write to you, and you can read over that right there yourself that they do allow in vegan certifications the use of other plants or other kitchens that make foods that aren't vegan. And they even say at the end of one of their articles, they write, "We consulted with other prominent vegan organizations and we all agree that vegan purity is more harmful than helpful." So they don't really go for vegan purity. They try to do the best they can, and that's how it is. So the reality is that vegan certifications would allow some traces, and they write all the time on vegan products that can contain traces of eggs or milk products and things like that, and still be considered vegan. Whereas it comes to kosher, that is a big problem. Cross-contamination is an issue, and even if something's not considered meat or has animal product by vegan standards, it can very much be so by Jewish standards. For example, many foods have gelatins in them, and gelatins typically are made out of animal product. And vegan foods might have a gelatin that is made of animal product and still might be able to squeeze through sometimes, whereas from kosher perspective, we can't, even the smallest traces of non-kosher are potentially a massive concern and can deem a product not kosher. Hi, Noam. Thank you for joining us as well. And hi, Lexi. Thank you for joining us and being a part of this. So we see this in the Torah, in the Bible. We see this where the Torah tells us that when the Jewish soldiers come back from battle against the nation of Midian, Moshe Rabbeinu and his nephew Elazar, which later to become the high priest, reviewed with the soldiers the laws that were relevant to the plundered utensils. When they brought back spoils of war, Moses and Elazar went over the rules and regulations of how you're supposed to treat utensils, food utensils that may have been captured and part of the spoils. And we see in the book of Numbers, the book of Bamidbar, chapter 31, verses 21 through 23, Eleazar, I'll quote to you, Eleazar the priest said to the men of war who went to battle, "This is the law that God commanded Moses. Only the gold and the silver, the brass, the iron, the tin, and the lead, anything that is used in fire shall pass through fire and shall be cleaned. It must, however, also be cleansed with sprinkling water. Whatever is not used in fire, you shall pass through water." So here we see the concept of taking utensils that were used and putting them through fire, which is the koshering process, to make them fit for use for a Jew. Okay? And if we see this clearly in the Code of Jewish Law, Rabbi Yosef Karo writes in the Shulchan Aruch that if someone purchases used utensils from someone that's not Jewish, meaning to say someone that doesn't keep kosher, and we know the utensils were used for unkosher food, the manner of making them kosher depends on how they were used. If the utensils, like certain cups and plates, were used for cold food or drink, they only need to be washed to be rendered kosher. They need to be cleansed thoroughly to ensure that the residue of the prohibited food is erased. If one purchased utensils that were used for hot food, whether they are made of metal, wood, or stone, they need to be washed with boiling water. So you see the concept of koshering utensils, and if a utensil was used for something that wasn't kosher, it can have contamination, and therefore, before you use it for kosher foods, if you don't want to make the food you're cooking not kosher, you have to kosherize the utensil. And so too would work with machinery or a kitchen that's being used for food to be kosher, even if the food you're using is vegan and doesn't contain any animal product. But if that kitchen equipment or machinery was used for animal product or unkosher foods, then you would have to go through a cleansing process. If it was a cold process, then it has to go through a thorough rinse down to make sure all residue is gone. But if there's any heat in the process or any sharp spices or things like that, or onions that bring out flavors from in a much deeper way, then you would need to kosher it either by boiling water, or sometimes you have to you have to burn it out, so to speak, which means you blowtorch the utensil if it's a direct fire use. For example, an oven, if you want to kosher an oven, you have to self-clean it, which brings the oven heat to a much greater heat temperature than is ever used for cooking, and that will remove the contamination, and only afterwards can you use this machinery or pot or kitchen for kosher purposes. Okay? So to summarize explanation number one, why you still need supervision for vegan foods or vegan restaurants, is because of shared machinery is used in the production of vegan products. A trace amount of non-kosher products can easily end up in vegan certified foods, and therefore all utensils used to prepare kosher food must be koshered if they were previously used for non-kosher foods, and therefore you would need a koshering agency, an authority, to make sure that the company that you're buying the vegan food for is in fact not using used equipment or old equipment or equipment used for other types of foods. And they would go in and they would make sure that if it was used for other types of food, that it was kosher. It means they remove any food contamination, either by boiling it in water or by self-cleaning or by blowtorch, whatever the method necessary is. Or they would, they'd go through the process and let you know that it is fit to eat for kosher standards because they had gone through the process and ensured that there is no cross-contamination, there is no residue left over, following the strict guidelines of the koshering needs from a Jewish halachic, Jewish law perspective. That's reason number one. Koshering. Reason number two is of why vegan foods are not automatically kosher. Fresh fruits, as mentioned before, fresh fruits and vegetables and grains in their natural and unprocessed state are automatically kosher. They do not even require a kosher certification. When you buy apples or onions or tomatoes or any type of grapes or apple, whatever it is, you don't need to buy ones that have a kosher supervision. They are automatically kosher. However, certain fruits and grains must be checked for the presence of insects or the eggs of insects, and which are not kosher at all. The prohibition against eating insects, even very tiny ones, as long as they are still visible to the naked eye, is mentioned 5 times in the Torah. By comparison, the prohibition of eating pork, for example, is only mentioned once. But eating insects is mentioned is mentioned 5 times, as we said. As for an example, in the book of Vayikra, in the book of Leviticus, chapter 11, verse 43, the Torah tells us, do not defile yourself by any of these creeping creatures. So any of these little bugs or insects, or the eggs of bugs or insects that may be found in vegetables or grains, are forbidden to eat. This means that a totally kosher looking bowl of salad can potentially have many non-kosher ingredients. Therefore, many vegetables, fruits and nuts and grains must be checked before cooking or eating for the presence of small insects. Some vegetables pose a particularly severe problem, such as artichokes and asparagus, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, and leafy vegetables. They contain insects all the time and need to be checked. And as a Jew, if you're following Jewish law, the halacha, before you eat lettuce, you're supposed to check many kinds of lettuce for insects. Now, you may think to yourself that, and maybe you may think to yourself, have you ever seen an insect in your salad? Have you ever seen an insect on a vegetable? And the answer you may give is no. But the truth is, you might have eaten them many times and just haven't been aware of it because you never looked too closely. When you take a head of lettuce and you just take it out of the fridge, break it apart and chop it up and put it in your salad, you are a very good chance that you are eating insects. And what we do in Jewish life before we eat lettuce is we check lettuce. We'll take lettuce, we'll separate the leaves one by one, and we'll put it up to the light, so to speak. You'll turn a light on in the room and lift up the lettuce where you can see it well in the light. And many times you'll find bugs crawling in the lettuce. And in Jewish law, we have to remove them. And other vegetables and fruits and and figs sometimes and dates and things like that oftentimes have bugs and insects. And in Jewish law, there's a prohibition of eating insects so long as it's visible to the naked eye. And therefore, you have to check them to make sure they are not present, because if they are present and they are visible to the naked eye, they would make your very kosher vegetable non-kosher. Now, if you do find them, when you do inspect the different vegetables for insects, if you do find them, all you have to do is to remove them, and then you're good to go. You don't have to throw out the vegetable, so long as you could remove all of it. But that is part of the process. And you may think that sounds crazy, but if you go to the FDA, for the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, they have a defect levels handbook, and they give you an example. They give you the numbers of how much bug, how much insect, how much larva can be in a product and still be considered healthy for consumption. And they have amounts for frozen broccoli and asparagus, canned or frozen, and Brussels sprouts frozen, corn, berries, okay, citrus fruits, and so on and so forth. You can Google this for yourself, and you'll see that they do allow traces of these things. And according to Jewish law, again, so long you have to inspect it, because so long as it is visible to the eye, it would be forbidden to eat. And therefore, in a vegan restaurant, before you can, or a vegan product, even though all of the ingredients are super kosher, they're just fresh vegetables, nuts, and things like that grow and are naturally kosher, you need to make sure that they are being checked. The ones that are suspect for insects are being checked and are not having an issue. I remember here in America, we don't even check this fruit, this vegetable, for insects or bugs or worms. But I remember when I was traveling, and as a rabbi, Rifki and I got married, before I moved to UCF, I used to do what we call Merkesh Lechis. Chabad International would send us out to remote communities around the world. And I remember being in Costa Rica and making a Shabbat dinner. And in Costa Rica, you have to check eggplants to make sure there's no worms in them. And I thought that was crazy. But when we started making a chatzilim for Shabbat, because we were making a Shabbat dinner for a bunch of Israelis in Costa Rica, we wanted to make them feel at home and make chatzilim, make it out of eggplant, fried eggplant or roasted eggplant. We cut these eggplants open, and many of them were loaded with these little tiny worms and stuff like that. So that would be super not kosher according to Jewish law. So you still need a rabbinical supervision of sorts, someone that's inspecting these items, these vegetables, and making sure that there are no traces of bugs and things like that. And therefore, vegan restaurants, vegan products, although they are a lot easier to deal with if you want to make them kosher, because you're not using animal products and because you're not using eggs or dairy and things like that, it's a lot less issues of mixing milk and meat and all sorts of things in recipes, which pose a big issue and won't be kosher. It might be a lot easier to make a vegan place kosher, a vegan product or a vegan establishment kosher, but you still very much need oversight to make sure that these processes are being followed and that these items remain kosher. Okay, to summarize, the two reasons why vegan restaurants and products need kosher supervision is because of the the first reason we gave was because of the sheared machinery used in the production of vegan products. A trace amount of unkosher products may end up in vegan certified foods, and that poses a problem to us, and therefore we need supervision. And the second reason is certain fruits and vegetables and grains must be checked for the presence of insects and larvae because of the prohibition against consuming insects, and therefore you need to have some type of oversight and supervision. That wraps up our class for today. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something about koshering process in general, about what kosher issues might come up when making a product kosher, and why, as to our question of the week, as to why vegan fruits and vegetables, vegan products, vegan restaurants would need kosher supervision nonetheless. That's it for today. And coming up for tomorrow, we'll be back on a daily schedule, God willing. Coming up for tomorrow, why do we say l'chaim as a drinking salutation? Whenever Jews get together, they lift up a glass and they say a toast. Jews always like to say l'chaim, right? So why is the Jewish toast l'chaim? What is that about? Thank you for joining us. Hope you enjoyed. Again, please let us know that you are enjoying and where you're watching from, who you're watching with. And I hope to see you guys all tomorrow. And here is your daily reminder, or whenever we give a class. We haven't given a class since Wednesday, so I haven't reminded you guys in a while. But we are running our annual summer raffle. You can get tickets to win awesome prizes like $10,000 and 2 tickets to Israel, $1,000, $500, and $360. Those are all prizes that you can win, and you can win while making a donation to Jewish Life and supporting Jewish Life at UCF and Valencia. All you got to do is go to jewishucf.com/raffle and buy as many tickets as you can. And each ticket goes to help Jewish Life at UCF in Valencia. If you've already gotten tickets, or for whatever reason you can't get tickets, please consider encouraging friends and family, mom, dad, bubby, zaidi, uncles, and aunts. Ask them if they can get some tickets and help support the good cause, Jewish Life on campus. Have a wonderful day. Hope you're all doing well. Staying safe. I know there is a big spike recently in what's going on around us and here in Florida particularly in the COVID. So please stay safe, use safety measures, be smart, don't do anything silly. And we are praying for your health and safety. And I hope you have a wonderful day, and see you guys tomorrow with our question of why do we say l'chaim as a drinking